welcome to the session called There's an App for That, why every team has their own tools, often more than one, and why this is a delightful abomination that should never ever happen and yet always does. What am I talking about? Well, what I mean is, if your company had 27 customer relationship management tools, would anyone have a problem with that? Okay, good. Yeah, the correct answer is yes, they should. And at least one person. And the person who should have the biggest problem with that is the one writing the check for 27 tools that all do the same thing. Imagine 27 tools that do customer relationship management, and each one is sort of custom crafted to do exactly what a small slice of 5 people need it to do, but that's it. That's crazy. And yet, in IT, we see this all the time. And that's what we're talking about, how that happens and how we make it go away. Now, before I dig into it, a little bit of introduction about me. My name is Leon Adato. I have been in IT for 30 years. 20 of those have been focused on monitoring, everything from Tivoli to OpenView to CA to Shinken to Nagios to my own little Perl scripts and stuff like that.
Yes.
And that one too. I've done this in really large environments, like the companies you see there, and also I've done it for very, very tiny companies that you've never heard of, and companies that defy any kind of definition, and you guys all know about that, because this is DevOps. I am currently the head geek. Yes, that's actually my title. I took the job for the title only at SolarWinds, and yes, I do get to wear a lab coat. That's also why I took the job. I also have an incredibly restrictive legal team. They made me put this slide up. I'm not going to talk about it. I do have a pile of swag in the back corner there, t-shirts and luggage tags. And if you want to ask questions, I'm there to talk about it, but that's it. I did want to mention that ProLogic is the one of the integrators locally in Israel that resells and helps to install that. That's all I'm talking about. There we go. Corporate stuff is over. So you probably have seen a diagram like this. In fact, if you were in Corey Quinn's talk, you saw one about this that was for Docker. Now, it might have been Docker, it might be monitoring, it might be version control, but everyone has, sadly, seen something like this, and it's a pain. Now, why is it a problem? The answer is it's actually not. Not necessarily. I'm not here to say complexity bad. I'm also not here to say that if your design does not fit on a 3x5 note card, it's too complicated. The fact is, what we do is complicated. It's not trivial. And yesterday, Avishai gave a wonderful talk about how things are sometimes more complicated than we even think. A 5-line Python script can be incredibly complicated if you think about it the right way. And then last month, Kevin Myers wrote an article on packetpushers.net about how simplicity is actually bad for networks. That complexity often creates a more robust and a better network. And that's great. Complexity can be very good if it happens by design, but sometimes it doesn't happen by design, it happens organically. And you all know how you grow things organically, right? That is not soft-serve chocolate ice cream. So in IT, things happen organically when people choose not to think carefully about the choices or the changes that they're making. So the reason why this happens comes down to really 2 main things. First of all, there's fear of conflict, and the other one is lack of trust, and that's what I'm going to be discussing now. Let's talk about fear of conflict. Who are we afraid of conflicting with? Well, you could say, well, management. I don't want to have to deal with management. That's true, but we really don't want to deal with anybody who's going to ask questions, slow us down, or try to help. That's really what we don't want to do. So we end up trying to make choices that keep us away from that kind of conflict, because otherwise we end up having to answer certain questions like, why didn't you include this in the budget request cycle? What they're really thinking is, so I could cut it from the budget and crush your dreams and make you a bitter shell of a human being. That's what they want. Or they say, well, why didn't you use the corporate solution, which, by the way, doesn't exist, or is years out of date, or is woefully inadequate. Why don't you put it up for RFP? Are you fracking kidding me? No. Or why don't you use the solution that Bob's team uses? Because co-owning a tool is a delightful situation that we all hope we get to do multiple times a day. Also, Bob's team is the custodial staff. It's not an apples for apples situation. So that's why we have fear of conflict, because we don't want to have to deal with this. As far as lack of trust, the other thing about this is that it can lead to having, it can lead to actually having duplicate functions in the same company in two different departments. We'll talk more about that later. Lack of trust. Who are we not trusting? Well, we're really not trusting anybody. We don't want to have to get anyone else's opinion. That's really what it comes down to, because we don't trust anyone's opinion, and there's a reason for that. See, we know about our stuff. We know what our stuff does. We know how it works, right? And nobody else does. Why not? Because companies don't hire duplicate teams. There's not another team of just like me doing what I do, because that would be redundant. So if I actually did want someone's opinion, and I don't, but if I did want someone's opinion, I would have to teach them about what I do, which is tedious and painful and really boring. And again, nobody does that. So again, we don't trust that anybody else knows what we're trying to do. Now, I just made a really good case for why we should all go out and pick our own tools all the time, right? And it's actually a solution that scales really well. The sphere of conflict and lack of trust works when you have an individual who goes rogue in the department and uses their own tool, even though everyone else, everyone's using Evernote, I want OneNote. Everyone's using Git, I want to use, it doesn't matter. You have it all the time. It works for an individual in a team, teams in departments, departments in company. It scales infinitely. This lack of trust and fear of conflict works all over. Now, it does tend to lead to very bad decisions, though. It's a good choice in the short term for the small group. After that, you ask questions that are really not optimal. For example, how much can we spend without anyone noticing? This is never a question you would ask if you want to buy good software, right? And yet, I see this all the time. The companies, especially monitoring, again, that's my thing, monitoring, they're saying, well, I really don't want to have to ask people about monitoring, so how can we just get a little thing over here that, right? That doesn't get you good monitoring. How about, what will we know how to support? Now, I could make the obvious joke, right? We're a Linux shop. We don't want to have to use something on Windows, so you avoid any tool that runs on Windows. But you could just as easily say, we're an Atari shop, so we don't want to run anything on Amiga, so we're not going to be using Video Toaster. And man, am I old. Okay, does anyone know what I'm talking about at all? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you so much. So the point is that what we know how to support, whether it happens to be a platform or it's a language or it's a whatever, that's a really poor reason to pick a tool, unless, as Charity had said, it's part of the critical path. Or another one that I love, what will run on the spare laptop that's sitting under Bob's desk, or on that VM that we never decommissioned, or within our existing cloud allowance? These are all choices that do not lead to, these are all decisions that do not lead to good choices about tools. And once again, I focus on monitoring, but again, you could say versioning or development or anything else that gets you in the same place. And as I mentioned earlier, it also leads to this amazing situation where two departments in different parts of the company have the exact same software under two different contracts. I have seen this. They don't even know about each other until the salesperson says, oh yeah, I was just visiting George over there. Like, you do? You could have been getting discounts. This does not fill me with glee and joy when it happens, and it happens a lot. It also leads to the idea of a unitasker. Now, for those people who aren't sure, unitasker is a term that was coined by Alton Brown. He's a Food Network, USA Food Network person, and he talks about such delightful tools as the strawberry slicer. This is a tool that, as the name implies, slices strawberries. It does not slice eggs. It does not slice blueberries. It only slices strawberries. Now, you could use, a knife. But no, you have a unitasker, a tool that does exactly one thing, right? Or my personal favorite, the Rolly. Now, if you've never seen this, this has one job. It cooks an egg. It cooks it into a round, vaguely obscene shape that tastes disgusting. This is what this tool does. It can't cook anything else besides an egg. It's horrifying in every way. So in IT, I laugh every time I look at the picture. In IT, a unitasker is a tool that does exactly one thing. It may do it very well, but it does one thing. It fits one use case. It monitors exactly one vendor's hardware, one model of one vendor's hardware. That's what a unitasker does, and it's never good. It always creates conflict and problem. Okay, so not by coincidence, DevOps is designed to address, among other things, two major dysfunctions among teams: fear of conflict, lack of trust. So let's take a look at how a DevOps mentality, a DevOps culture can help with this. Now, one of the first things, if you're going to go down the path of reducing the number of tools that all do the same thing, the first thing is you have to make sure that the team understands there's actually a problem to solve. You'd be amazed at the number of times I walk into a group and they think it is perfectly normal and natural to have 23, no, I'm not exaggerating, 23 different monitoring tools that all have some layer of overlap. But some of you are laughing. Show of hands, how many people have seen this? Whether it's monitoring or whatever, right? Okay, they think it's natural, all right? Again, what's water? I don't know what you're talking about. So the first thing you have to do is make sure they understand that, yes, it is an issue. The next thing that you need to do, is remember that the I in IT is for information, not function, not customization, not pretty GUI, none of those things. It's for the information, because at the end of the day, what teams really need is the data. Even if what they're talking about is, hey, I need this to execute this program, they actually don't need to execute this program. What they need is the data that says the program executed, and here's the result, or how fast executed, or whatever it was. They honestly, in their heart of hearts, don't care what does the executing or how it executes. They just need to know that it happened. It's the data. So if you can get teams to focus on that, then you have a bridge into reducing tools that you don't need. So this is a slide, but I'm going to use the actual tool here. This is a spreadsheet that okay, let's see if I can do this though. How would I make this show on the other screen? I don't know. Okay, I won't bother. Not important. Now this happened to be a spreadsheet that I put together for monitoring. Again, it may not work for you if you're trying to do version control tools or something else, but this is just the way that I put it together. Once again, 23 tools. Wasn't exaggerating. These are all tools at a particular company that I worked at that do some form of monitoring. So the first thing I did was I listed the tools along the top, and then down the side, I took a look at the functions, except it's not really the functions. It's really the types of data that I'm looking at. However it's collected, this is what I need. And then I really just went through and I started to click off the check boxes. Which of these tools do these things or have this data available? What I was able to do instantly, of course after the months of trying to collect the information, but what I was able to do was first of all see where I had almost exact duplicates of function, where something was duplicated. I was also able to see where a tool did very little except one thing that was done by almost everything else. Not sure we're really needing that right now, okay? Then I took it a step further though, because even though I said, don't worry about function, the fact is that some tools are easier to use, some tools are cheaper, some tools are more robust, or whatever it is. So we began to identify the primary, and I don't think I have on here, the secondary and the tertiary, the third level, of the tool that we prefer to use for any particular data type. And I'm not saying that you should only have one tool for everything, because we all want a sanity check. We all need to have that, other place to say, does this match up at all? But with this kind of information, you know what you're getting into. You know that you have 23 tools. You know that this one is completely unnecessary. Also at the top, I was able to tally up all the check marks to see which tool actually did the most for me, the biggest bang for the buck. Now that's not the only criteria, but it was a way for us to assess, for example, if this tool, and I know it says SolarWinds, and I'm not really trying to make it I'm not trying to do that. If this tool was, $20,000 a year to support, and this tool was $800,000 a year, I might not be making up those numbers, then I would know that maybe I'm not getting the value that I wanted for that tool set. So that's, another thing to do. So some kind of analysis that allows you to understand what your environment looks at is the next step, because now you know who to go talk to about reducing, and you know why. Because again, what's it all about? the information, the data. Now you know the data that it presents, and so the teams that consume that data, you can say, oh, I have it here, and I have it here, and I have it here. One of the hurdles or one of the pitfalls that people get into when they try to reduce the complexity of tools in their environment is not understanding the use case of the tool. Now, in my world, where that happens the most is the difference between monitoring and management. So I go into a team and I say, hey, your tool, XYZ, does monitoring, but you don't need that because I have this much better tool that does it over here, except they don't use it for monitoring, they use it for management. They actually control the hardware or the software or whatever it is. I need to understand that or I'm going to be in a fight that I'm not going to win and it's not going to help me. However, I can go in and say, hey, I know you get this piece of information, this data, from your tool, this management tool that you use, but I also have this information. Can we compare? Because I want to make sure that my tool is, my tool or this other tool is giving correct information or what the differences are. You end up improving, you end up creating a better data set by doing that. But you don't want to fight this fight. You don't want to try to take away something that has a use that isn't what you're trying to reduce. Another pitfall that people run into is having to talk about money with people who really like talking about money. I mean, like the executives. Now, this is, and most IT people really don't like to talk about money, so I have to warn you that it's going to be necessary in order to get this done. I have a whole other talk, I call it Buy Me a Pony, and it talks about how we in the technology fields can get better at talking with business people about it in ways that don't make them laugh at us or say no all the time. But here's the short version of it. You cannot win approval with management by talking about features or execution times or functions, no matter how much you love them. And man, we love them, right? That's what it's all about. It works really well. It's going to save me hours. They don't care about your hours. They never will. The only things they care about are three things. You have to make your discussion fit. Will it help me increase revenue? Will it help me reduce cost? Or will it help me avoid risk? That's it. You have to make your story match that, one or more of those. If you do that, you will escape from this conversation relatively unbruised. But if you don't, you're not going to have their support, and you're probably not going to be able to get through it. So that's another pitfall. Another pitfall is using a word that means the same thing, even though it means different things, even though it sounds the same. Does anyone here speak classical Chinese? Like a little? No? Do you? Can you read this? Like just 2 lines? Okay, so this is the phonetic version of it. I won't put you on the spot. And it's really she. That's it. She. You know, that's what it sounds like. It is obviously different characters. It is obviously a completely different story. This is a Cantonese tongue twister. Okay, so but it sounds the same. Now, what does that look like in IT? Well, in my world, log monitoring is my favorite. You know, I have that Inigo Montoya moment. That word you keep using. I don't think it means what you think it means. This is my Inigo Montoya moment, log monitoring. Because when people say log monitoring, they could mean syslog. Now, syslog is a very particular protocol that sends very particular kinds of data in a very particular way. It's lovely and wonderful and extremely chatty, and it could ruin your life, but that's a different story. Okay, that's that. But some people say log monitoring, and they mean Windows event log. Now, Windows event logs are also wonderful, but they aren't the same as syslog. They're completely different things, but people still say log monitoring for it. They could mean log file aggregation. Now, log file aggregation might involve aggregating syslog and or Windows event log, but it is not those things. It is something else. And they might say log monitoring, but what they mean is there's a file in this directory over here on this machine. I want to look for the word banana every half hour, right? That's log monitoring also. All those things people indicate by saying she. They say log monitoring. Doesn't mean the same. If I'm on a campaign to reduce the complexity of a particular kind of tool set, I need to know when the same word is going to mean multiple things, because otherwise I'm going to be in an argument that I don't need to be in. Now here in DevOps, this is one of my wonderful favorite pet peeves, APM, Application Performance Monitoring. It couldn't be simpler, Application Performance Monitoring, except there's 4 different things you could mean. It could mean, and most people in the room, I'm guessing, when they say APM, they mean code-based application performance monitoring. That means how the code is executing and how the transactions, and it goes into the message queue, and it comes out through the stack and all that stuff. That's wonderful, but it bears no resemblance to the application performance monitoring that I've done for 20 years, which really has to do with, is Exchange running? How's SharePoint? Is my BlackBerry server responding? You know, how's the application doing? It could be your custom application, which is 4 services, 2 perf mon counters. That's application performance monitoring from what I traditionally did in the ops side. It could also mean web-based performance monitoring, which is really just web transactions, pinged them, and all the rest, right? How's my web performing? Or it could be database application performance monitoring. So people say APM, and I now have to ask them for a dictionary to figure out what they're talking about. Because if I say that I'm trying to reduce or focus or improve the APM capabilities, it's going to mean different things depending on who's talking. So let's say you've done it all, right? You have made sure that the words that you're using are clear and you're not confusing one term for another term. You have figured out a way to talk to the bean counters in a way that's meaningful for them. You have used your analytical skills to figure out where there are opportunities to reduce, and then you go to the team and they refuse to let go of their tool, or even better, they demand another one. What do? You take it and you turn it, you reframe it as a request for data. Goes back to what I said before. Reframe it and say, what's the information that you're looking to acquire? If you have it already, and you should know you have it already because you have that spreadsheet or something like it, if you have it already, then you tell them, oh, is this what you mean? And you present that data. You do a raw dump of the database, whatever it means. If you can do that, then what you're going to do is you're going to show them that you have the information they need, and all they really need is the information. You're going to present it to them. You're going to say, now, let's talk about how you want to consume this. Where does this need to get to? You talk to the department or team or whoever owns the source, the originating source of that data, and you create collaboration between those teams so that they can both consume the same data in ways that are meaningful for them. That builds trust. That reduces fear, and that gets you to an environment that is simpler and easier to manage. Completely unnecessary summary. Tools can proliferate without your knowledge a lot of times. It happens organically, and and it's something that you can fix. It's not trivial to do it, but it is possible. It will take time, and you just have to sort of work around those pitfalls. Any questions? Excellent. No questions. Woohoo! We're done.